Good afternoon. Welcome to EduSet Network. Friend, today we have discussion on topic corporate communication interfaces. And for discussion on this very topic, we have in a studio Mr. Rohan Ubriani. He is a known advertising professional and teaches advertising management in different professional institute in New Delhi. I hope his knowledge and experience will help us to understand corporate communication interface in a new perspective. So, on your behalf, I welcome Mr. Rohan Ubriani for EduSet lecture. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Professor Amrinder. Good afternoon, students. As he explained, today we will be covering this subject, corporate communication interfaces. Please understand, let's try to understand what is corporate communication as a definition. Corporate communication is what a company communicates with its stakeholders, which is different from product or service communications, where company promotes its products or services in such a way that you go to the market and buy those products and services. Corporate communications are different in that respect, that where a company tries to communicate with its all associates that what this company is all about. They're basically selling their corporate image to the people. Let's see who are the organizations who require corporate communications with all their stakeholders. Government organizations, which include central government, state government and PSUs. Then we have public limited companies, the companies which are listed on the stock markets and whose shares are held by various entities, whether it's companies or say other institutions, financial institutions or individuals, and they're traded on the stock exchanges across the country. Then there are private limited companies which are held privately by a few individuals or institutions and whose shares are not listed on any stock exchanges. And then finally we have NGOs, non-government organizations who are into some social activity, some social function where the government is supporting these organizations on specific social issues. Okay. These are the corporate communication requirements with respect to stakeholders. What is a stakeholder? Stakeholder is the one who holds a certain stake in a company's activity. It need not be a stake in terms of shareholding or partnership in the company. It could also be a customer is also a stakeholder in that sense. And because of this, every organization, every mature and respectable organization with an objective of enhancing its brand image needs to, number one, hold communications with general public, communication with clients or customers, communication with vendors or suppliers, communication with financial institutions like banks, because they also require banks to associate with them in terms of conducting their business. They also need to hold communication with regulatory or statutory bodies. And finally, they also require to hold communications with Indian or their foreign collaborators. Now, these are the various types of corporate communication activities which this is like just a small list. The list could, this is an abridged list. There could be many other activities, but these are the main activities a corporation or an organization communicates through with all its stakeholders. Primarily, they include newsletters, brochures, leaflets, annual reports, press statements, direct mail, letters or emails, and corporate films. Now, to start with the newsletters, we have seen so many newsletters appearing on our environment from time to time, coming from different organizations. A newsletter through which a company usually or an organization usually communicates on a regular basis, generally on a monthly basis. They try to communicate the news to all their stakeholders, as we explained in the previous slides, to all stakeholders what this company had been doing in the last 1 month, what are their achievements, who are the new people joined, what activities in terms of say motivational activities they conducted for their employees, or some kind of encouragement activities they did for their say vendors or suppliers or the other business associates to enhance their business or enhance their corporate image in the society. Newsletters also cover what the new collaborations or tie-ups that company has entered into with various organizations, and either some good news will also be shared in terms of profits that the company has generated, or some relief has come to them through government subsidies or cut in duties or taxes, or sometimes it could be some bad news also which affect their bottom line, which is profitability, in terms of some kind of restrictions from government side or increased competition or things like that. Brochures could also, brochures fall into basically two categories. One kind of brochures which do the promotional activity with the organizations or with the individuals. They are called corporate brochures. In those corporate brochures, company talks about how the company came into being, the inception part, the history, the original promoters, and as the time went, how the successive generations of the promoters family or say other stakeholders have actually taken the company forward. For example, Tata Group is promoted through 20 generations of Tata family. They have survived 20 generations, and from the time they came into existence and till today, the group has grown from strength to strength. And then another kind of brochures are the ones which are primarily brochures in the sense that they are also a communication say items, but say for example an annual report is also a kind of a brochure, but that is more for the shareholders of the company, and it is also a legal or a statutory requirement by the company law board. Leaflets primarily are basically for the communication with the customers to tell them what this company is doing on a daily basis for the customer as a customer care service. Press statements are also very interesting corporate communication environment, because sometimes a company wants to communicate with the public that what is the latest development that has taken place which is in favor of the company, and they hold press conferences or they issue press statements so that the companies in their competitive environment, they also take note of it, that how their competitors getting ahead, and the existing customers of that company should feel good about the strides the company has taken forward. Sometimes press statements are issued to allay certain kind of fears. Say for example, few years back, you must be aware that Coke and Pepsi got into a controversy of having pesticides in their drinks, and there was one NGO which brought out this news into the market, and the Coke and Pepsi came under a lot of stress, and they had to allay fears. People had stopped drinking Coke and Pepsi, fearing that it has very high level of pesticides, which is basically a harmful chemical for the human consumption. So both the organizations came out with a number of press statements refuting all those claims that it contains pesticides. They even took their bottles to the Western countries' laboratories also and got their reports, and those reports were published as a part of the press statement, and to allay the fears of their customers so that the people are brought back into the confidence environment and they start consuming their soft drinks. After that, we have direct mail. Direct mail is also a part of the corporate communication, where company usually generates a database from a certain source, either through their own say database of their customers, or they acquire a certain database in order to communicate with new customers. For example, they'll go to say a library, or say they go to a bank, and then they either buy some kind of a database from them, or they have some kind of a bilateral arrangement that they use each other's databases, because usually the customer profile of certain organizations, non-competing organizations, they match, so they swap the data from each other, and then they send a printed material either in the form of a letter or in the form of a leaflet or a brochure. They put into an envelope and send it either by post or courier or by hand, so that the customer who receives it can go through those details, uh, relaxedly without having the pressure of going through the ad or on on TV or in a newspaper, and he can go through a detailed information in those leaflets, and if required or if he feels like, he can get back to the company for more information or actually place an order for the products or services that company has advertised through those leaflets. But it's not necessary that it's always a product or the service that is being advertised. It's sometimes company would like to convince a customer. This could be an exercise which we call a pre-IPO exercise, where a company tells a new customer that this is what the company is all about, how it has grown over the years, and why it could be coming out with a public issue in say next few days. So therefore he should consider applying for that primary issue. Then we have one of those traditional methods of contacting customers for corporate communication, which is letters or emails. Now, a letter used to be an older form where a company writes a letter on its letterhead detailing what the purpose of that letter is and giving details to the person, and with a certain objective that why that letter is going to him and what is expected from that person to come back as a reaction to that letter. Now, today letters have also taken the advanced form of emails. Even emails today are considered as proper legal documents in any environment. So, while the letter will consume a paper, ink, and it will also require to be sent through a certain medium, whether it's post or courier, and it will take time to reach. Email has taken care of all these negativities. There's no paper, there's no ink, and it doesn't require an expensive medium like a courier or a post, and it is instant. It doesn't take much time. In fact, it takes a few seconds to reach the recipient. And finally, the corporate films. Now, corporate films which companies usually go for are because they would like to tell people in a visual format that who were the people behind this company and what the company looked like in those times when it started and how it has moved over a period of time, so that the imagination of the client or the viewer is taken care of. Now, when you receive a letter or say a non-visual communication, you are expected at a subconscious level to visualize what that company could be, how will it look, what kind of people it has, what kind of founders were there. In a film, everything is depicted right in front of you without making any effort or without making any say imagination or assumption of what it could be. It's right in front of you for you to see. These are expensive media and they take some time also to create, but once they are created, they actually have far bigger impact than any other corporate communication environment. I would like to show you a film also during this lecture, but let's finish with the basics first and then we'll come to seeing some examples of that also. Now, these are the salient features common to all types of corporate communications. Now, before one embarks on creating any corporate communication for his or her organization, these are the features to be kept in mind before we begin any exercise. Number one, the identity of the sender of the corporate communication in terms of name, logo, and address of the organization. Now, this may sound very elementary or basic, but it is extremely important that it should be there in any communication that you send out, so that the receiver, the first of all, would like to know where it has come from and whether it's a company or an individual. If it's a company, then where it is logo and what is the address from where it has come, so that in case he needs to give feedback, he should have the opportunity or the facility to send his feedback or reply to that also. Now, the second salient feature is purpose or the objective of the communication. It should be very clearly detailed upfront. Sometimes in a letter, in the subject line, it is written that this is a proposal or this is some kind of information. Whatever that purpose or objective is, it should be right up front for the reader or viewer to see, directly or indirectly, but it must come through. Like, for example, in a film, there is no opportunity to communicate what the objective or purpose is. But as the film begins, within say few minutes, it should be clear to the viewer what this film is trying to tell me for that particular organization. And next salient feature is what is the well structured details in terms of chronological layout of the entire subject matter. What it means is, like for example, in a newsletter, once you when you begin, there should be some kind of a, say, as you go through any book or any newsletter or any brochure, there will be a cover page with a title telling you what it is all about, followed by what a contents page, that which particular topic is being discussed on which page. These may again sound very elementary to be communicated, but they are essential parts. Sometimes they are missed and they become very embarrassing aspects of any exercise. You may have done a great job, but then if you missed out on basics, then it becomes very embarrassing. Okay. All this corporate communication should have deadline of periodicity. What it means is that if a newsletter is coming to you, it should contain which month or year it belongs to, or if at all you are creating, say, any leaflet or brochure, at some corner, in some corner of the that particular communication, it should be mentioned whether it's May 2010 or something like that, or in a film also at the beginning or the end. It should, so that whosoever sees it at any given point of time, he should have the idea that it belongs to what kind of time, when it was created, and what was the situation of that company at that particular point of time. It should also be reader and viewer friendly. What it means is that it shouldn't require great effort from the reader or the viewer to decipher meaning to take out the meaning or take out what, to understand what that communication is trying to communicate to him. It should be extremely easy. The language should be ideally simple, not too high flown, in the sense that it doesn't make sense to say over 90% of the people, the words that you use, they should be simple enough, and so that they make sense to a large majority of the people. And it should also be laid out in such a way that a reader or a reader especially shouldn't be looking for the information in a very haphazard or in a complicated manner. It should come to him automatically, like the contents page giving topics and the page numbers, and you could also use different colors for different sections, so that he understands that, okay, this red section means this and this blue section means that. Okay. Lastly, but most importantly, there must be a feedback mechanism for continuous improvement. All such communication should come, as I said earlier, that it should have the name, logo, and the address of the organization. At the same time, it should ideally have some way, like for example in a film, it should give an email address for people to revert, saying that they like the film, they didn't like the film, or they should also give their own views in terms of improving the film, or sometimes they could also get back conveying what were the mistakes or errors in that film in terms of its production values, or in terms of the facts presented in that film. Barring film, all other communication aspects, all other corporate communication environments are physical in nature. For example, paper. They all are on paper. Whether it's a letter or a leaflet or a brochure or an annual report, they all are on paper. So it can have some part of it which can be detached through perforation or whatever, where people can write their name, address, or phone numbers, or other contact details, and some portion where they could give their feedback in terms of, as I explained, their views, they liked, did not like, the errors and mistakes, etc. And that should come back to the company in a prepaid envelope, so that customer doesn't have to spend any money on sending it back to the company, and it forms the backbone of the future such exercises, where the mistakes or the errors of the previous exercises are taken care of in the future communication exercises, so that it improves and moves towards perfection. Now, while designing the corporate communication, it can be done in two ways. It can be done in-house. What I mean by in-house is that you could have a division you could have a division in the company where you employ a few people who specialize in designing such communication items, and you if that should be done only when you have a very high volume of regular such requirements, where you need to produce a number of leaflets, brochures, or these newsletters on a regular basis. Say for example, companies, big companies like Tata's or Reliance, they have many companies in their group. So each company will require the entire set of these corporate communications, newsletters, the leaflets, the brochures, the annual reports and things like that. And suppose there are 10 companies within a group, so each one of them will be requiring these 4 or 5 or 6 items on a regular basis. Each one will require a film on an annual basis. So collectively they will require about 70, 80 or 100 items to be produced in terms of paper, or probably 10 odd films to be made every year. So in such a case, giving out such work to an outside agency is also possible, but it will make more sense to set up your own in-house division, where you employ high caliber professionals to work on these environments, and they produce these things on a regular basis, keeping the basic the corporate look throughout the entire collection as same, so that people know that it is coming from Tata's or coming from Reliance. On the another option is that you may engage a specialist individual. Suppose you require just 1 or 2 in a year, one film in a year, say 1 or 2. Say your newsletter is a quarterly newsletter, so probably require 4 such quarterly newsletters in a year. So you could engage a specialist individual, either on a say a full-time basis or a part-time basis, or a group of experts, or appoint a design agency to provide professional services. Now these agencies will interact with the client on a regular basis to understand what is the purpose of that particular communication, and then they'll take the brief and so on and so forth, and then they will come back to the client with designs, as we see in the next few slides. Now this is how a corporate communication is executed. Now execution of corporate communication, what happens in this is that a basic draft is prepared first by the client, by the user, by the company, or say by any organization who requires it. They prepare a basic draft first, highlighting the need for the exercise, why it is required, and contains rough details of its content. That very basic, it may not be in full sentences or whatever, it will basically give the idea that why we need to conduct this exercise, why we need to bring out a newsletter. That is to be explained to the designer or the people or the agency who is coming to handle that work for the organization. Now what is the need for that exercise, and what they should be communicating through that in terms of basic contents. They may not be very big, but at least say 4 or 5 points that what the contents are. Then this rough draft is shared with the engaged professional who work on it using their expertise, in order to enrich the contents with superior language text and relevant reference visuals. Now a client will have certain, they will have certain say image in their mind that what kind of newsletter they are looking for, or what kind of leaflet or brochure or annual report they are looking for. They will have a very rough idea, but agency will understand that. They will ask a few questions, clarify, and basis that document, which contains the rough details of the content, they will enrich that particular activity through their expertise of superior language text. They will add in better words, they will add in more lines, those text and relevant reference visuals. Now initially they will pick up visuals from here and there just to convey, and later those visuals are converted into real visuals. Now what I mean by that is that, so once you create a particular, say a leaflet, something like this, let's see. Now this is for the newspaper Mail Today. Now this is a very interesting piece of communication. What they're trying to tell people, that usually there is a sense of fair say complexion which is appreciated by the people in the country. So what this is trying to say is that I'm not fair, but I'm lovely. And I'm not yesterday, I'm Mail Today. So they've taken a pun on that. Mail Today having the word today. This is a collaboration between Daily Mail of UK and India Today Group of India, and they have come out with a daily newspaper called Mail Today. So this is just taken a pun on their competition, that I'm not talking about yesterday, I'm talking about today. But having said that, see, what they would have done is, having taken a brief, they would have worked out these headlines, and probably initially they may not have this particular model as the final model. They would have put some picture, or they would have put, you know, these two visuals picked up from somewhere. They called reference visuals, and they would have presented this in a rough form to the client, that okay, this is how it will look like, and once he approves, then they will go for the final visual, which again has two options. Either you having the approved, you know, layout with you, with the kind of, you know, the reference visual you have, either you go to the libraries which have a bank of, say, such visuals, and you try to pick up something which matches your reference visual, and you buy that visual. Otherwise, you will have to go about organizing to shoot that particular visual by hiring a model, hiring a photographer, hiring a location, and that is expensive and time consuming exercise. A lot of people these days, they go to the photo banks or say such photo libraries and pick up a visual which meet their requirements. Okay, and then finally, in terms of execution, the final design, complete in terms of text, which will have various font styles and sizes, visuals, colors, graphics, and it requires approval from a competent authority. Usually client will have a senior manager or the owner himself, you know, approving it finally, because it is a financial decision, and it also has a certain organizational image aspect also, which a very senior person or a owner would be the best person to judge and give final approval to. Now let's talk about, till now we have talked about the basics. Let's talk about beyond the basics. What it means by beyond the basics. All that stuff we have talked about till now is about the basic aspects of creating any such corporate communication activity. Again, you know, the initial is that you take a brief from the client, he gives you a rough draft, you work on the rough draft, you improve the language, you create a visual, you make a layout, you present it to the client, and then you take it forward in terms of printing it or making a film after the approval of the client. But going beyond the basics is what is required these days, is that how you present your idea is far more important than what your idea is all about. What I mean by this is that instead of creating a very run-of-the-mill or a boring communication which passes like a ship in the night and which nobody notices, it comes to you. Today, I'm sure each one of you or even me, we receive about whatever we receive in terms of corporate communication from various organizations, 90% of is something which we just have a look at it for a couple of minutes and just give it to someone or throw it away. But there are 10% such communications which actually take our fancy. They come to us as very interesting communications, and we spend time going through it, understanding how it was created and what it is trying to say. Today there is a huge information overload on all individuals, which means that each one of us is bombarded with so much of information, so much of communication during our entire waking hours. The moment we wake up, we have so many things coming to us in terms of newspapers, TV channels. You go out and then there are hoardings and banners or whatever. You go to the market, there are so many posters around. So much information coming to us that we have developed a knack of cutting through the clutter and focusing on what makes sense to us, what is interesting to us, what is valuable to us. And that is about 10% of the entire information that comes to us through various media or in various forms. So therefore, it's very important that one keeps basics in mind. One needs to be quite innovative and creative to present an otherwise ordinary idea in an extremely interesting manner. What does it mean? Fundamentals have to be kept in place. Say for example, when you study in any school or college or say professional institutes, you are taught theory, you are taught fundamentals, whether it's engineering college or medical college or say management institutes. Now, however much they may seem uninteresting or boring, they have to be learned in order to build your foundation. Like a building, requires a very strong and say very solid foundation on which you build your entire structure. Now, keeping basics in mind, that is what it means. You have to stick to the basics. You can't move away from the basics. Uh, Over and above that, you need to be innovative and creative. These are the two cliched words a lot of people have used over a period of time. But what I mean here is that you have to think little differently, whether it's, as I say in the next point, whether it's a leaflet or brochure or film, they all are required to generate curiosity among readers or readers to stay glued to your communication. Now, what that could be? Let's see, at this stage, I would like to show you a couple of examples to show what I mean by the creativity. Please look at this closely. This is a leaflet created by Deutsche Bank in the form of a leaf. The subject of this leaf is "Join us to save the environment." When they talk about the subject is environment and then they are doing a social activity, join us to save the environment, and this is the logo of the Deutsche Bank, and this is what the line says, join us to save the environment. And at the bottom they have the company name, bank name, and the logo. It is created in the form of a leaflet and it opens in the form of a leaflet as well. It's the very basic, I mean the very fact that it is created like this takes the attention of the reader or the receiver, and he starts spending time on it in terms of reading. They have put in small graphics of leaflet on both the pages in such a way that they don't interfere with the reading matter, and the entire subject or what this communication is all about is printed on these two pages, which are cut in a form of a leaf. Now, for this kind of leaflet to be done, you require, after having printed in a proper, say, square page or a rectangular page, you require a die of this size, that once it is printed, then it is folded at this, in the middle of this page. After folding, a die is used to cut it in a shape like this, and then it is sent in an envelope which is also of the same shape. I don't have the envelope right now, but then it came in the same size or same shape envelope also. They could have done a very simple job, like they could have printed the entire thing on a say rectangular piece like this also, but they used not only the design of a leaf, they also used the color as well as the small graphics of this also, so that it stands out in crowd. Among the 10 newsletters that I would have received, this I would have definitely gone through. I'm not sure about the other 9, and same is true for everyone who receives so many information through leaflets or brochures or newsletters like that. Okay, I would like to also show you a film by Tata Group, a part of it, not the whole, because the film is a little too long, and it will show you, because you may have also seen a lot of organizational films where a company talks about how this company came into being and who are the founders and how they've taken the company forward. Been in the industry for over 2 decades, I found that 90% of such films are so boring that you don't feel like seeing it beyond few minutes. But this particular film, made by Tatas, is done in such an interesting manner that you stay glued to it for the entire duration of, I think the film is about 1 hour, but I'll show you just for 5 or 10 minutes. And then they also have used, they could have used any other narrator, but they used Kabir Bedi, who is not only a Hindi film star, but he is a alumni of Stephens College and he has worked in European films. And please pay attention to the kind of language or the accent he uses while narrating the Tata Group history through this film.
made him so. A poem satirizing him began, "My name is George Nathaniel Curzon. I am a most superior person." At 39, he was the youngest viceroy ever. Soon after his arrival in India, Curzon met a delegation of Englishmen and Indians. They wanted him to support an unusual scheme, a university of advanced scientific research. It was the concept of a 60-year-old Parsi industrialist with the eyes of a visionary, Jamshedji Nasarwanji Tata. Jamshedji believed that such an institution was essential for the future progress of the country. He had offered to donate half his fortune towards its creation, a sum that in today's terms would be over £20 million. But Curzon was not easily swayed. British power was at its zenith, and each successive viceroy, supreme in his seat, would receive, review, and generally refuse requests for government support.
How will you find young men fit to enter this university? And what employment will they find after they've left it? Gentlemen, I find your scheme overly ambitious and wholly impractical.
Curzon may have thought this proposal, framed and to be largely financed by an Indian, very presumptuous. But Jamshedji and Curzon had one factor in common: the Victorian era, an era of elephantine but purposeful progress. Each, for his own reasons, wanted India to move forward with British help. But how was it to do so? In time, East and West might meet, but a great gap was still to be bridged. The head of the family, Nasarwanji Tata, was a religious, thoughtful man. In 1839, though only 17, he had sired a son and heir. Jamshedji Tata, like his father, was formally inducted into the Zoroastrian faith at an early age. Later, like his father, he was ordained a Zoroastrian priest. The ancient beliefs and principles of his forefathers worked in Jamshedji's blood all his life. Years into it, he made his family motto, good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Umta, Bukta, Uvrashta. Nasirwanji left Navsari for Bombay. It took some years to settle down, and then he sent for his son. Jamshedji was only 13 when he first entered the large, tumultuous town, which in the days to come he would help turn into a great city. He joined what later became Elphinstone College. It was the early summer of Queen Victoria's reign, and reformers such as Lord Macaulay had said that the more British the Indians became, the better. Some might say that Jamshedji was the living proof of Macaulay's intentions. He delighted in the liberal education he received and developed an abiding interest in classical English literature and botany. But he watched his country change. He watched the uprising of 1857 being brutally quelled by the British. The next year, in a ceremony on these very steps, the steps of the Bombay Town Hall, he watched as India was transformed into a British colony. During this time, he married a beautiful adolescent girl, Hirabai. Within the year, they had a son, Torab. Jamshedji was given little time to decide how he felt about any of these events. He was bustled off to Hong Kong and Shanghai to trade in cotton, silks and teas. In 1864, the trade winds brought Bombay a cotton boom. The boom was fueled by the American Civil War, which had caused a blockade of the ships that brought American cotton to England. The bellies of the English cotton mills rumbled and creaked with deprivation. In the end, Indian cotton was needed to keep them and their workers alive. Jamshedji set sail for England to start a cotton agency there. He had been plentifully provided with securities and bills of exchange on the cotton market. But while he was still at sea, the American Civil War ended. The gluttonous Manchester mills resumed their accustomed diet of American.
Okay, students, you must have seen this film with a lot of interest. You would have also noticed all the interesting elements which went into making this corporate film. This is made with a very high level of professionalism, extremely rich content, rich performances, rich accents, and you would have also seen the high quality of the film production in terms of the kind of angles used, and the kind of the locales used, and from the very sheen or shine of the film, you would have understood that what kind of effort or money has gone into making this film. If you ever have a chance to remain in, say, to be in an environment where you are a part of the team which is creating such films, please keep in mind these elements which are essential for the success of any such exercise. See, one could have simply made this film asking, say, few people here and there to come together and narrate this. But have you seen how even the narrator, who happens to be a film star, he has taken very keen and very keen interest and have worked very hard on his language and in his accent in communicating extremely clearly how this group is, operating in this country, and how they have worked with Britishers in pre-independence era, and how they tirelessly worked for the progress of the country, irrespective of the status of the country, whether it was slave to Britishers in pre-47 time and after 47 also, how they've been working to take this country forward. Apart from all this, the direction of the film and the various, the locales or the other elements of the films which they have, used extremely professionally. Please bear in mind, next time if you are if you're in any environment where you are a part of the team, this is something which one of the best films that I have ever seen in my last 20 years being in this industry. Now let's see what is the next part of our lecture. Okay. Now let's come to one of the most important aspect of the creating the leaflets or say such corporate communications. It's called it's a term which is being used for quite some time in our industry. Thinking out of the box. What is thinking out of the box? What it means is that when you think in a logical or say in a reasonable manner, which is not wrong, it's you're thinking within a box. Within a box is in given parameters, within the say instructions or within the brief that is being given by a certain competent authority that okay, this is what I'm looking for, and you operate on that. That's not wrong, but that also has some fear of becoming ordinary in terms of effort, and it may not be very impressive or attractive to the to the reader or visual. Now what I mean by thinking out of the box is that in addition to being innovative, creative and interesting that we have already talked about, you also need to work towards breakthrough designs in order to make your communication stand out in the crowd. As I had explained earlier, or I had shown you this Deutsche Bank leaflet also, one could have made a very simple design for that particular leaflet or say direct mail, but somebody thought that let's go a step further and be little bold and innovative and try to impress the reader with or say receiver with this kind of a activity, so that it remains in the memory of the reader for a very long time. Now I have already given you some examples of let's say such path-breaking communications, whether it's a printed format like this or whether it's a film environment like the film that I have shown you just now. Now in conclusion, let me explain that all communications, now being in the communication industry for such a long time, I have also come across this fact that all communications come with an expiry date. This business of creating corporate communications produces perishable items which does not have a very long shelf life. What I mean is that a newsletter usually is on a monthly basis, or say a leaflet comes to you and then it stays with you for a week or 10 days, and then either it goes into a file for future reference or it goes into the dustbin. Any communication, even for that matter annual report, as it says, it comes once in a year and you go through it for a few times, and then after say 15 or 20 days you forget about it or give it to someone else. So therefore, given the fact that all such communications come with their expiry date, they are perishable items like food items, therefore it's all the more reason to create such communications which linger on in the memory of the readers or viewers for a very long time. And also remember one very important truth. Now this is something which I have always believed in my entire professional career, that there is no such thing as a new or original idea. Having been in this, the mankind had spent so many thousands of years till now, all things, all new ideas, original ideas have already been generated. I firmly believe in this. So therefore any new or original idea is a synthesis of two existing or old ideas. And such existing or old ideas are all around us, and they are for us to locate and link two such ideas into one great idea. Now if you see anything interesting or any this is also I would rather leave to you as an exercise to all my students. Please try to pay attention to any such new innovative thing that comes across, comes in your environment. It need not be any corporate communication activity. It could be anything which appears new or innovative to you. Analyze it in a deeper sense and see that what two existing or say old ideas have resulted in this new activity. With this, I would like to conclude my lecture today, and thank you so much for your attention, and I would like to thank you and happy ideating.
We should We should be careful to see the new idea, to new and existing idea, and then a new idea. So the task is to present an existing idea to a three, merging them and presenting in a new way. Their observation at both.
You see, okay, let's look at this mobile phones for that example. I mean, if I were to give an example, this has also come into, a lot of people would have thought that this is something very new that has, incidentally, I'm sure each one of you know that Motorola is the inventor of mobile telephony. Uh, before mobile phones came into being, we were using those landline phones, wired phones, and we were happy with that. Only thing is that at times we felt that if you're moving out of your office or home, and you should have some kind of a contactability. While we were using only landlines, we had satellites in the orbit, and we had been sending all of some major developed countries. They've been sending satellites into orbit, and they were holding wireless communication through those satellites with for their official purpose. And phones were the ones which were dependent upon the wired lines. So somebody actually put these two things together in Motorola and said, if satellite can create a communication from the outer world, from the outer orbit to the Earth, it can come through without wires. Why can't the same thing be taken across from, say, one individual to another individual on Earth itself? He just connected two existing ideas which met an existing need of being connected, having a connectivity. When you are not inside your home or office where you have a facility of landline, you want to have that facility of communicating with people. Somebody put these two things together and created a new great idea. This has not come from any other, there's no other source of this mobile telephony. These are the two existing ideas which have become the source for this mobility. And then it's such a revolutionary thing. Today, I think in today's world, it's impossible to think about a life without a mobile phone. When they were not there, we were living peacefully. But today, if it is not there, and for some reason, if a mobile phone is not reachable for whatever reasons, say technological errors or connectivity problem, whatever, one is very restless without being connected to the world. Even if you're sitting in your office or home, you can't do without this great idea.
When advertising professionals, they get an opportunity to do something, what the challenges, what the first thing come into their mind?
You see, when we are given a task by any of our clients or any of our, say students, when we work with them on few projects, the first thing is that comes to the mind is that, okay, if this is what I need to do, the mind operates on two parameters. One is that whatever inputs or resources that are required to complete this particular task is available or will be available to me. That confidence we work on as a given, that if something has been given to me, suppose I have a client asks me to make a film, or a client asks me to make a brochure or whatever. So whatever resources I require, whether I require intellectual resources in terms of contents, data, photographs, visuals, graphics, or whatever, or in terms of financial resources, in terms of client putting in money, in terms of that how expensive it's going to be, and if it requires travel to different locations to shoot interesting visuals for that particular activity, we operate on this parameter that we have the confidence that all resources either are available or will be available to us. So there are no barriers to excel. The barriers to excel in a particular activity come from if the resources are either limited or some resources are lacking. We operate with this parameter that they will definitely be there, either they are there or they will be made available. And the second, which is equally important, is I should create something which nobody has created before. If I have all resources available to me, the intellectual resources and financial resources, what is stopping me from creating a world-class communication, whether it's a film or a brochure or an annual report? I should be unstoppable, and I allow my creative juices to flow to the maximum extent. And it's not only a question of creating a good job and making good amount of money, or say earning a profit. One goes for earning a great respect and obviously the fame that he or she has created something which nobody has done before.
So that
That's
is what thought process goes with all the advertising professionals.
See, as I explained,
Because here the communication is one side, the expertise are there, the other side a layman is there. You have to satisfy the thirst of the layman because they need, they want to see the thing differently. You want to present differently, and in that case there are some kind of contradiction may emerge. How uh, you sort out this contradiction?
okay, I think it's a very interesting and very relevant question to this particular activity or the exercise that we have undertaken. Now, I'll give you a very recent example through a feature film that has come, Three Idiots. I'm sure everybody must have seen. Now, it requires great guts to think on terms of creating a film like that. One of my favorite films, but then apart from the personal choice, see, somebody has and all the ideas were there in the film which are existing in our environment all the time, all the time. There are students studying, in different colleges. They come through the same problem of, learning what the teachers are, teaching in majority of such institutions where students are not particularly happy with learning theory only. They want practical aspects also. They want to give one freedom to, express their creativity or innovation. Now, what it requires is two things. One is that one should have a very high commitment to hard work. Hard work does not mean that only studying is studying. It's hard work also means acquiring, in our profession especially, reading for few hours a day is must, so that your information, bank is the richest. You have the knowledge, because at the subconscious level it is the information which is processed. They give you the ideas which are quite revolutionary and path breaking as well. And the second is that there shouldn't be, we feel that there shouldn't be any fear in terms of thinking about something which nobody has thought before, something out of the ordinary, and something which everybody does. And even if there are certain taboos or barriers in terms of societal restrictions, one should go ahead of those mental barriers and try to create something which comes to your heart and mind immediately, so naturally, and comes out of your own environment itself.
That's it. So, well, friend, with this word, we would like to end the lecture here, and I thank all of you for watching the lecture. And on your behalf, I thank Mr. Rohan Ubriani for giving such a wonderful lecture. Thank you.